This week on The Other Side.
I have a right to work here.
He has a right.
I have a right to be here. And
You're arresting
not
him.
to tell students they need to tell puberty blockers.
You're arresting.
An Irish teacher back in prison after standing up for his principles against gender ideology. They've thrown him in jail, they've fined him thousands, but he will not back down. ASIO clarifies its position on screening Gazan refugees coming to Australia, but the opposition says the government is failing to take the lead. Kamala Harris slips in the polls after a very weak and safe TV interview performance as Trump continues to do numerous media appearances. Facebook chief Mark Zuckerberg gets his butt kicked in Congress, and the Australian economy is sliding deeper into recession. We'll explain. This is The Other Side. G'day Sydney, g'day Hobart, g'day Australia. This is The Other Side for the weekend commencing Friday, September 6, 2024. I'm Damien Curry. The Other Side is your weekly analysis of the best news and commentary to get you smart for the weekend and the week ahead without the woke. We have a new show dropping on YouTube every Friday night at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. You can also watch the show in segments throughout the week. We drop a segment every night at 7 p.m. as well. Our bias on this show, we declare it right up front, is centre right. It's also the truth and a bit of science. Good old-fashioned, everyday, common sense Aussie values. And we're fully transparent about our political perspective, unlike, well, you know who. Let's go. In Ireland, a teacher has been carted off to jail for the third time because he simply refuses to stop protesting against trans activism in schools.
I have a right to work here.
He has a right.
I have a right to be here. And
You're arresting
not
him.
to tell students they need to tell puberty blockers.
You're arresting him
Not
because
to
he
tell
won't
students
endorse
that they need to take
Shame on you.
Enoch Burke was arrested by the Garda, the Irish police, outside the Wilson's Hospital School in Westmeath County this week. It's been a more than 2-year drama with the law that has really captured the media and public's attention in Ireland. Burke says the school sacked him for refusing to call a boy a girl. Burke is a Christian and says his religious beliefs mean he can't do what's being asked of him. He says transgender ideology is, quote, hellish and results in children taking puberty blockers and being scarred for life. And he will not lead children down the road of suicide, mutilations and regret and a breakdown of relationships with their parents, unquote.
And I'm not going to turn my back on my duty to my students.
And I'm not going to turn back on my duty.
No, you don't have a duty to do what's wrong.
No, you never
And to
have a
bring me
duty
before
to
the
do
court.
Even though
To bring me before the court.
inside those gates.
To bring me before the
Even though
court.
there's abuse.
This is a
puberty
disgrace.
blockers,
Children are being
puberty
taught
blockers,
and tell a young boy,
surgery.
yes, surgery, mutilation,
Yes.
mutilation,
It's a
and
disgrace.
An
mutilation,
Absolute disgrace.
mutilation.
An absolute disgrace.
You're telling a boy that
Puberty
he's
blockers.
gender
Do you have a
neutral,
conscience?
yeah, that he has to take chemicals, that he has to take
Absolute
chemicals,
no law.
that he has to take
I'm not going
chemicals,
to be heavy-handed.
no, that he has to take chemicals.
I'm not going to be heavy-handed.
He has broken no law.
The whole drama all began back in 2022 when Burke refused to comply with the school's direction to call a student by a different name and use the pronoun they. The Irish Independent newspaper reports that the courts ordered him to stay away from the school, but he kept showing up and protesting. So they locked him up for contempt for 100 days between September and December 2022. After the Christmas holidays, he was back at it though. He had a fine of $1,000 a day imposed on him. He hasn't paid any of that. In August 2023, he was arrested for still turning up at the school and was again jailed that time for contempt. He has spent more than 400 days in jail so far for his convictions. He will not pay the fines, he will not stay away from the school, and he wants his job back. He just got released from jail again this June. It was the Irish summer school holidays until this week when school went back and he was back.
This is an innocent teacher, a Christian man.
And I won't
Shame upon you, Garda Síochána.
Burke has broken no law.
be asked
He
to
has
endorse
broken
it.
no law.
I have a right to my job.
His
I have a right to work here.
He has a right.
I have a right to be here.
Shame upon you.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
Shame on you. Shame.
This guy is standing by his principles 110%. Accused of forcing his Christian beliefs on others, he said, quote, "I didn't force my beliefs on anyone. That belief was forced on me. I was commanded to feed that poison to young people in my care," unquote. Burke is now back in jail after that arrest that you just saw there. He refused to give a yes or no answer when asked if he intended to return to the school again by the judge this week. So he got jailed for contempt again. Burke told the judge, "You will answer to God for imprisoning me for my religious beliefs." So what do you reckon? Has he gone too far, or is he a champion of the right to stand by your own principles and beliefs and accept zero penalty for it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. One thing is for sure, he's showing the limits of the authorities and making them look like fools. Private internet access is terrific. With all the big government clampdown on online speech lately, you are taking a big risk if you don't have a VPN. That's a virtual private network. And it blocks spying eyes in big government or big corporate from seeing your IP address and hacking into your data. Now, it's super easy and cheap to set it up. It's not technical. Even I could do it. And even if you already have a VPN, you should consider switching to these guys, because since I have had zero reduction in my internet speeds, which was a bit of a problem with the one I was using before. And I don't even have to think about this one. It's just on automatically whenever I turn on my computer. And even better news is that the other side has secured a special deal for you, which will get you set up for 83% off the usual price and with 4 months free. And get this, that brings the price down to less than $3 a month. It is absolutely amazing. So jump on it now, sign up to our special deal and help support us by supporting our sponsors. piavpn.com/otherside. piavpn.com/otherside. Former federal Labor Party leader and unsuccessful prime ministerial candidate Bill Shorten has announced his resignation this week. Well, actually, the Prime Minister announced it.
Thanks for joining us. My friend Bill Shorten has decided that he will not be contesting the next election. It's a big decision for him, for Chloe and their family who are joining us here today. Chloe and Clementine, welcome. And Bill and I have had a number of conversations over this, about this over a period of time. I think it's a credit to Bill that this news will come as a surprise, because at no point in the past 2 and a bit years would any observer of Australian politics think that Bill Shorten was taking it easy or slowing down.
He'll stay in Cabinet as the Minister for the NDIS until he retires in February next year. Shorten gave a long speech about his past and says there will be even more tales to come in February. Can hardly wait.
When I was voted Labor leader after the 2013 election, the party, as the Prime Minister said, was at a low ebb. We were reduced to 55 seats, our worst result since 1996. We were up against an ascendant Abbott government with a fierce ideological agenda, and the 2014 budget was the centre of that.
It's like watching, your boss resigning and giving a little speech, but they've done it like he's a great statesman, and with this long history, it's not quite working. You also can't have a fierce ideological agenda, according to them, unless it's the left's fierce ideological agenda. Naughty, naughty Tony Abbott wanting to cut all that government spending and thinking that we should tolerate a centre-right Conservative elected government and that it should be, centre-right and Conservative.
There was an attempt to dismantle Medicare, slash the funding for schools and hospitals, make it harder for people to go to university. They're ripping off the safety net for people on the pension and young people looking for work.
Yeah, because they're all vote-winning strategies, Bill. That's exactly what Conservatives want. We want to make people suffer, It couldn't just be that people on the centre-right and right of politics have a different ideology that they believe will actually make life better for everyone. Oh no, only big government can make things better for people. Leaving them alone, free market liberalism, lower regulation, centre-right ideology, that'll never work. except for the small irritating fact that, it does work, and it has worked everywhere it's ever been applied, and big government socialism has failed everywhere that it's ever been applied. Honestly, this is the worst, most anti-business, anti-freedom government this country has seen in half a century. Tanya Plibersek, our Environment Minister, who's more concerned about feral cats than anything else at the moment, has got to be living under a rock if she thinks we can afford, with the dreadful state our economy is in right now, to pull the pin last minute on $1 billion mining project because of some nutjob fake ideological whim. At the last minute, after 4 years of an approval process and going through all that struggle from the investors and the people trying to get the project running. What signal does she think that sends to investors here in Australia and investors abroad that might want to be investing in Australia? Is she nuts? Name one thing that this government has done to make life easier for small and medium-sized businesses that our economy desperately relies on. I can't think of anything. It's just more red tape, more green tape, add a little rainbow tape, and little DEI bull dust for good measure. Oh yes, we'll make sure you can't start a business in Australia. We'll make sure that you have to fight to employ people and create jobs. We'll get in your way every step of the way. And if you do manage to overcome all that and actually make a buck at the end of the day, we'll tax you to death, you greedy capitalist bastards. Sorry, Bill, you do not lecture the right of politics about ideological agendas. Yours and Albo's and Tanya's and Dr. Jim's, ooh, I want to fix capitalism. I have a PhD, ooh. That has been a complete disaster. You're retiring, Bill Shorten, because you're sick of the game. And you know that another stint in opposition is on its way. It's the sinking ship and the rats are leaving. But don't take my word for it. Let's look at the facts. Inflation is on the up, and the Reserve Bank is now saying that not only are interest rates not likely to come down anytime soon, they may need to go up again first, as we predicted on this show last week. Thank you. So let's look at the data out this week that showed that we're now in a deep and entrenched recession. That means our economy is not growing. It is in fact shrinking. That's not good for anybody, rich or poor or gay or straight or black or white or Muslim or Jew or trans. Nobody. It's bad for the whole rainbow, trans, extra triangle, coloured bits flag. You got it, left-wing people? Good. Okay, so GDP, here's an economics lesson, stands for for the left. I know the right get this already. GDP stands for gross domestic product. It's a measure of everything we as a country produce. And it's used all around the world to measure how healthy an economy is. If you've got 2-3 month periods of negative GDP growth, shrinking, that's 2 quarters, that's what economists technically call being in a recession. We have had six consecutive quarters of negative GDP per capita growth. You can't just look at GDP growth overall as they try to pretend, it's actually growing. No, because we keep bringing immigrants in to make it look like the economy isn't going backwards, but it is. You have to divide the GDP by the number of people actually producing and use the GDP per capita, per person numbers. Australian Taxpayers Association Chief Economist Dr. John Humphreys tweeted this chart this week and pointed out that Australia's current per capita recession is the longest on record, which goes back 50 years. Others have been steeper, but this is consecutive for 6 quarters and it's entrenched, therefore. The longer it goes, the harder it is to get out of. A rich nation blessed with so much going backwards. It takes some special ability to wreck something as blessed as Australia. It takes a special kind of politician and bureaucrat mentality to stuff things up quite this badly when you're starting with so much more than most other countries start with. Good on you, Team Albo, and the Teals, and the Greens, you too. You must be so proud. The size, I've got to also say maybe the Liberal Party, the last government too, has a little bit to do with this. The size of governments in this country desperately need to be slashed. And we need an opposition with the guts to stand up to public servant bureaucrats and say, sorry guys, but for the good of the nation, this has to be done. Chop, chop, chop. Australia has 2.5 million public servants. almost 2 million in state government, 350,000 in the federal government, and 200,000 in local government. That is insane for a country of only 27 million people. But the problem is that these 2.5 million people, they vote. And of course, most of them, not all, but most of them are voting for bigger government, not for smaller government. So no politician will ever campaign saying that they'll slash the public service. And I want to make a distinction between the public servant bureaucrats and the public servants like police, nurses, etc., teachers who are on the front line working hard and productively contributing to the economy. Right? There is a difference. The people on the front line are sick of the bureaucrats because they make their job harder with the red tape, the green tape, the rainbow tape, etc. Now, if anybody did stand up and say we're going to slash the public service, a politician, they wouldn't get elected because the numbers are stacked against them. So we are kind of stuck in this as a country unless we get really smart, really fast. But that's hard when the biggest and most powerful media organisation in the land is a government organisation full of public servants. On top of a shrinking economy, governments keep borrowing money to pay their bills and keep their insane promises of freebies that they made to get elected. We're heading for $1 trillion debt. That means paying the interest bill on that government debt every year, and just paying off 10% of the principal would eat up almost a quarter of the money that governments have to spend in total every year. That's money that they take through tax, by the way, from the productive economy. It's immoral, as former Howard Government Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson told Sky News a few months ago.
Firstly, there's the moral issue. That might sound a funny thing to say, but economics is not just about a sweet set of numbers. It's about better outcomes for people. And I remember John Howard saying that day, we need to end the intergenerational theft. That's a moral issue. When a society won't live within its means and expects its unborn, its children and its unborn, to pick up the tab for their ways, that's wrong. Secondly, there's the issue of character. We were able to do it because we stuck to one another like glue, even though, frankly, at times it was unbelievably difficult. We were upsetting our colleagues, we were upsetting the community, media speculation was rife, but no one leaked. Everyone got on with it. We displayed the character and the discipline and the trust to make it work.
Just contrast that for a moment. The willingness of the old Howard government to do the morally right thing and face all that political backlash because you know it's right for the country, with the endless immoral spending, borrowing of Labor and the Greens and the Teals. Remember this every time dopey Adam Bandt says he wants to give you free this. Let's have free dental and mental in Medicare. Well, it sounds lovely, right? Who could argue with that? Except that we can't afford it. I wonder if Adam's dad ever stepped in and said, no, mate, put that toy down. You can't have it and we can't afford it. I doubt it. It's not hard politically to go out and tell the public that you're going to give them free stuff. It's even easier to make the moral politicians who say, no, hang on a minute, we can't afford that, we need to do the responsible thing, look like evil capitalists and the bad guys. That's why without mature, well-educated, smart voters, any country is stuffed. And right now, we are stuffed.
The third thing I'd say is about leadership. We need our leaders to actually go out there and explain why some things have to be done. And Peter Costello often makes the point that we didn't have a constituency. People say, oh, there's no constituency now for what you're talking about, Peter, cleaning up the Economic Act. We didn't have one either. They weren't actually busting the door down to say, balance the books. You've got to make the case, see it through, and then you get the results. And the results were spectacular. The Australian economy took off. Employment improved out of sight. Living standards started to rise. It was a golden era.
My God, leadership? Don't ask the current Liberal and National Party for leadership. Are you crazy? We don't have the constituency for that. We'll never get voted in. Heaven forbid they should take an idea to the people and actually sell it. That would just be, oh, no. We've got the research here saying that people want, oh yes, net zero and yep, all those things we've got to do. Yep, got to get onto that Labor agenda and stay on the defensive the whole time. If we only had more people like John Anderson inside the Liberal and National parties of today. By the way, he did try to make a comeback last election. He tried to run for the Senate in New South Wales. You know what the party said? They said, no, we don't need you. No, thanks. Wouldn't want a smart elder who used to be Deputy Prime Minister in there. Like, that would just be terrible, wouldn't it? What a difference it would make. Did you know that for roughly every 2 nurses in Australia working hard to save lives and take care of the sick on the front line, there's 1 taxpayer-funded bureaucrat sitting behind a desk doing admin and making and enforcing rules and regulations? That's right, nearly 1 bureaucrat for every 2 frontline nurses. In most countries, it's 1 bureaucrat for 10 frontline nurses. That's how bloated our public services become. But you'll never hear about it from the regular nurses' unions because they also represent many of those public servants. So says the leading alternative nurses union in Australia, the NPAA. If you're a nurse, it's time to change to a union that will not only look after you without using your money to support the Labor Party, but which is taking on the government health systems to sidestep the bureaucrats and use the savings to pay all nurses 25% more. That's what they want to do. The current waste has got to stop. All the red tape doesn't just suck up resources and time, it actually means that the nurses left on the front line have got to jump through more hoops and it stops them from being able to do their jobs properly. Admin is a hindrance. So join the union that will actually stand up against bloated government. Join the NPAA, the Nurses Professional Association, will make hospitals locally autonomous and run by elected boards. To find out more, just Google NPAA. The NPAA's fees are half the price because none of your money goes to any political party. And as an Other Side viewer, if you use our special code OTHERSIDE1 when you sign up, you will get the first 3 months free or $100 off your annual payment. Go to npaaredunion.com and sign up now for a better union and support the other side too by supporting our sponsors. Thank you, nurses, you legends. It's the story with more tentacles than the love child of a kraken and an octopus. The defamation trial of Brittany Higgins wrapped up this week. This was the action brought in the Supreme Court of Western Australia by Higgins' former boss, Senator Linda Reynolds. She was a minister in the ScoMo government. Senator Reynolds' lawyer, Martin Bennett, did his summing up at the end of the trial, and he really let rip. He wants the judge to rule that Linda Reynolds was grossly defamed by Higgins in a bunch of social media posts, and he's asked for a permanent injunction to stop her writing or saying anything about Senator Reynolds in the future. He told the court that Ms. Higgins is plainly inseparable from her truth, a concept that's factually devoid of actual truth, unquote. He said that if she isn't restrained, she'll continue to proclaim her truth in the book that she's received more than $300,000 to write and the associated TV and film rights. But most importantly for us as taxpayers, the Australian newspaper reports that Mr. Bennett told the court that it should, quote, nail the lies spread by Brittany Higgins, spelling out what he said was a demonstrably false statement used by Brittany to get her $2.5 million government payout. During the trial, Bennett claimed that Higgins had secured that big government payout based on a statement that was, quote, complete rubbish and which contained a mishmash of errors. The payout and the statement were all about the claimed mishandling of Higgins' rape allegations by Senator Reynolds and the Morrison government. Reynolds says this was all part of an orchestrated plan to go after her and the government. Speaking outside court to reporters, Senator Reynolds says it was important to note that she has never doubted or contradicted Higgins' rape allegations, saying the whole point is that she did everything she could to support Brittany, as ABC News reported this week.
At its heart also lies the suggestion Senator Reynolds tried to cover up Ms Higgins' allegation for political expediency, something that the senator, with a track record of advocacy for women, took very personally.
I think it's important to note that I've never doubted or contradicted. In fact, I did everything I could to support her allegations.
Senator Reynolds went on to say that this case is not about the allegations and the finding of rape, but it's about what was said and what was alleged about her actions and those of Fiona Brown, her then Chief of Staff, and her fellow Liberal Senator Michaela Cash, and what she described as false allegations of a cover-up of a rape. Bennett also highlighted the rather nasty text messages about Senator Reynolds that were sent between Higgins and her now husband David Shiraz back at the time. But Senator Reynolds had to take weeks off work to go to hospital after the stress of Higgins' accusations flared up her heart condition. The couple texted each other with messages reading, "Wow, she's done. You don't take 3 weeks off and come back," and "Suck shit, Linda, you awful human."
Sent after Senator Reynolds was admitted to hospital following her collapse in the Senate.
No, if you can just give me a minute.
Her lawyers told the court the messages revealed a coordinated plan by Mr Shiraz and Miss Higgins to weaponise the rape allegation to damage the senator and the then Liberal government.
That's how ABC News' Rebecca Trigger reported it. Nice and straight and neutral. Congratulations. The closing comments from Linda Reynolds' side followed the closing from the Higgins side earlier this week. Higgins' lawyer, Rachel Young, said that Senator Reynolds should not be launching a defamation action against a young female rape victim who'd gone public to try to make Parliament House a safer workplace. She pointed to the senator's leaking of confidential documents to the media and her description of Ms Higgins as a lying cow as examples of her harassment of her client. She told the court that Brittany's motivation was not malice, but to sincerely bring awareness to the issue of sexual assault in the workplace. And she said it was Brittany, not Linda Reynolds, who'd paid the highest price. Her ongoing mental health issues meant she couldn't give evidence at this defamation trial. Just regarding that lying cow statement, Senator Reynolds said it was made in response to Higgins' claims about the handling of the allegation by Senator Reynolds, not about the rape allegation itself. Higgins threatened the senator with defamation over that comment at the time, and the matter was settled out of court with Reynolds paying $10,000 to a charity. It's going to be a while before we get a ruling in this case. Justice moves very slow in Australia. Some would say so slow that it might not even be just in some cases. In this case, we can expect to wait months. The judge hasn't set a date for the judgment. Wow, we really had some interesting reactions to our interview with US Conservative commentator Candace Owens last week. Most of you said it was fairly balanced. Others said I wasn't tough enough on her over the allegations of anti-Semitism.
I've landed on the wrong side of that issue. I've critiqued, God forbid, you critique Bibi Netanyahu and his actions. You will just meet the full swing of the mainstream media. And I have stood up to these lobbying groups. And like you saw, the Zionist Federation of America, who are effectively just trying to bully people into their perspectives. And their perspective is that you can't critique anything Bibi does. And as a Christian, I am not comfortable with the amount of child death that is happening in Palestine right now.
Some commenters have said that Candace downplayed the extent of her recent anti-Jewish commentary. She says her comments, though, were taken out of context. Frankly, I just wanted to keep the focus on the Australian story, which is that our government and our opposition think it's just fine to deny a celebrity or anyone a visa to tour Australia purely on the basis of their political views. That, in and of itself, never mind the issue, that is a disgrace. And any nation that does that really can't call itself free. We are a nanny state if we can't let our own public adults make their own minds up about visiting political speakers. And if we're too immature to make up our own minds about stuff. And I'm frankly sick of the government treating us all like children and running the country like it's a high school. Candace Owens is not an expert on the Middle East either. She made her name because of her stance on BLM, Black Lives Matter, and African American issues, and I still respect her for her work in that area. In any case, it probably is time to check in again on the Israel-Gaza war. Surprisingly, there are other commentators more suited to speak on that topic who've been following it closely since the beginning and the wider issues of that situation in the Middle East for decades. Piers Morgan's online show was back from summer break this week, and his first guest for the new season was popular author and commentator Douglas Murray, and their discussion on the war was wide-ranging and insightful, and it touched on a lot of the issues that people have been concerned about. There have been huge protests and a general strike in Israel this week against the government of Benjamin Netanyahu after the murder of 6 Israeli hostages by Hamas. Their bodies were recovered after IDF forces raided a tunnel near the city of Rafah. It's believed that they were murdered just as the IDF were closing in to rescue them, after almost a year in captivity. The horror of that sparked an understandable rage and frustration among Israelis. The protesters were angry that the Prime Minister hadn't done a peace deal with Hamas, and already brought all the remaining hostages home.
Nobody can be particularly surprised by now about the brutality of Hamas, but I think still people are shocked. I think everyone's shocked that they would be holding on to hostages for almost a year in tunnels underground, making them undergo who knows what amount of torture and deprivation, only then to kill them maybe hours before they were going to be rescued by the IDF. One of them was an American citizen as well. I think there's a lot of questions in America about how it could be that an American citizen could be held hostage and then brutally executed like this.
The interview covers many details that we don't have time to go into on this show, but I strongly recommend watching the full thing over on the Piers Morgan Uncensored channel.
And Hamas are a terror organisation, and I've completely concurred with you from the start of this that what they did on October the 7th was of such a heinous scale that Israel obviously had to respond with massive force as they've done. But you'll also be aware, as we head towards the first anniversary of what happened there, that this is an ongoing, increasing, massive problem worldwide for Israel and its reputation, because so many people, including the UK now under Labour government, they've just announced, as we're talking, they're going to suspend some arms sales to Israel. 30 of 350 licenses will be suspended due to a clear risk the weapons will be used by Israel in a way that could breach international law. So there is increasing pressure, as you know, around the world for this to get resolved. Increasing views expressed by many countries that what Israel's now doing it constitutes a war crime, and you and I have debated that many times. But do you not feel that something has to give here, that this has to get resolved somehow, and that the only way to do that is, as with all these situations, you have to eventually compromise in some way? And the problem for Netanyahu is that people think he is completely incapable of offering Hamas any compromise.
But there again, if I can say so, Piers, it's the same thing, which is the presumption that it's Netanyahu who is uncompromising. We end up with this, again, because Netanyahu is a democratically elected leader, and so it's assumed that some pressure can be brought to bear on him. In my view, it is not Netanyahu who's uncompromising. It's Hamas that's uncompromising. They could have handed back the hostages last October. They could have not done this. I mean, they could have tried to build a state since 2005, when Israel withdrew from the Gaza, and handed the place over to them. Hamas could have used the billions of dollars and pounds and euros that British and European and American taxpayers gave them since 2006. They could have used those billions of dollars to build up Gaza. They could have made a booming, in the good sense of the term, Mediterranean paradise. They could have created wealth for their people. But you know what they did? They built down instead of upwards. They built a tunnel network bigger than the London Underground for all of those years, and they squirreled away the money, just like Yasser Arafat did before them, and they made themselves rich.
Douglas Murray told Piers Morgan that the Hamas leadership are worth billions of dollars and are living in luxury in Doha with their families because they don't want peace or to build a thriving state for the Palestinian people. They just want to destroy Israel.
They have said themselves they want to use Palestinian children and their lives in order to pressurize the world. These are fanatics. They want the death of their own citizens. In order to get world opinion turned against Israel. Again, how do you negotiate with that? The assumption always is in the West today, because we're so sort of fat and lazy in our expectation that peace is the norm, and that historically it's the norm. We're so full of our own expectations and presumptions that we always think that wars end by some kind of compromise and coming around the table, to use the cliche. They don't. Historically, most wars end because one side wins and one side loses. And one of the reasons, in my view, why there is this endless rounds of war in this region is because the Israelis are never allowed to win, and Hamas, in this case, are always allowed to draw. And I think that that is simply to set up the precursor for the next conflict. If Hamas come out of this with a fighting capability, then there will be another round of this war in a couple of years. So when David Lammy and others say what we need to have is a peace deal, I'd say on what terms? Everybody wants peace except for Hamas and the fanatics. Everybody else wants peace. All of these people in the south, these kibbutzniks and the party goers and others who were murdered on the 7th, all dreamed of peace with their Palestinian neighbors and brothers and sisters. Who stopped that peace being possible? Hamas, from 2005 and again to this very day.
That's author and commentator Douglas Murray speaking with Piers Morgan on Piers Morgan Uncensored this week. Great interview. Make sure you catch it. Piers has been hitting some goals this week. He also had an interview after that one, a couple of days later, with Candace Owens and Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Rabbi Shmuley was something to watch in that interview. It was a complete train wreck for him. And Candace held her own against those claims of anti-Semitism. I strongly recommend watching that one as well. Closer to home, Albo's Minister for Home Affairs and Minister for Immigration, Tony Burke, the man who can protect us from scary 35-year-old American mums who are conservative political commentators like Candace. But he doesn't seem to see that 3,000 Gazan refugees pose any threat whatsoever to our country. That bloke. I mean, at least ASIO's chief, Mike Burgess, after saying it was okay to stay here if you support Hamas a week or so ago, has this week clarified his position. He's now made the criteria clear. He says you're a risk to the security of Australia if you support Hamas, if you support the October 7 terror attacks, or if you support the destruction of the State of Israel. I'm so glad he finally cleared that one up. But does Albo's government even care? It's Minister Burke who's really in charge. How on earth can Burke assure anyone that the people who've been granted tourist visas have all met that criteria? It needs to be a routine part of the procedure, as the Dutton's opposition Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Patterson pointed out this week, that every applicant coming to Australia from Gaza on a tourist visa should be automatically referred to ASIO for that security clearance along those criteria. The fact that this is not already happening and hasn't happened for the first 1,000 or so arrivals is an absolute dereliction of duty on the part of the Albanese government. And I know everyone speaks very highly of Mike Burgess, but ASIO's very lacklustre performance in all of this also shouldn't go unnoticed by concerned Australians. With all the government crackdown on freedom of speech and digital IDs and marketing companies manipulating your information, you would be crazy not to have a virtual private network on your laptop and phone. In fact, all of your devices. I was once a bit afraid of how these things work, that they might, slow down my internet speed or be too complicated to set up. But private internet access is terrific. And when you buy from them, you're supporting the other side too, because they're one of our sponsors. So to help keep yourself safe from big government and big corporations with a VPN, get onto private internet access. We have done a fantastic deal just for other side viewers. You're going to get 83% off the usual price and 4 months free. That brings it down to just $2.68 a month, a half a cup of coffee. It's amazing. You just got to use the special access code that you can see on your screen right now. That is piavpn.com, piavpn.com/other side, and you'll get that discount if you do that, okay? It's super easy to download, super easy to get running. Literally just takes a few minutes, and it's always on. It didn't slow down my internet speed one bit. And a side benefit is that I can now watch Netflix using my Netflix account as if I'm in any country in the world, which opens up the whole global Netflix library to me. And best of all, by using PIA, you're supporting the other side in a very big way and helping us to keep on providing an alternative to the mainstream media focused on Aussie news. piavpn.com/other side. Get on it. The CFMEU is taking the federal government to the High Court to challenge the laws that have forced the union into administration in every state in the land. The government is having none of it and says the laws will hold up. There were big rallies in almost every Australian capital city late August as the CFMEU members and supporters took to the streets to challenge the federal government laws that have put the whole union in every state under administration. Here's how your SBS reported that story.
Thousands of CFMEU members supported by several other unions, all rallying in solidarity against federal government moves to take over the CFMEU.
We are going nowhere. We are staying. We are here for the fight. We are here for the struggle.
The federal government with this shakedown, they think they are bigger than everyone. They keep forgetting the Labor Party was made by the workers and for the workers.
A sea of high vis visible on the streets of Sydney, Melbourne, Perth and Brisbane. In Canberra, CFMEU National Secretary Zack Smith told the crowd the union wouldn't be going anywhere.
Administration will come and go, politicians will come and go, but this union will stand long after they're gone.
Yeah, well, someone who kind of agrees with that is, a little bit, but for very different reasons, is our regular commentator on this show, the founder of the alternative non-Labor Party aligned unions of Australia, the Red Unions, Graham Haycroft. And we do need to fully disclose now that Red Unions are an advertising sponsor of the other side, but that's because they're aligned with our mission, which is great, but we'll always disclose that when we have them in the news part of the show like this. And other unions are always welcome on the show too. Graham, thanks very much for joining us and for your time. You also believe that putting the CFMEU into administration is actually kind of going to change very little.
In answer to that, no, nothing's going to change. What people don't realise is that the entities themselves aren't that important. There's no way the 20,000 memberships of the CFMEU currently going to the entity in administration. Now, what they'll do, I predict, and I've got no inside information, but we operate in the sphere and I know how they think and I know what they do. They will just quietly move everyone over into one of the other entities. They've probably got the name CFMEU something or other reserved, and that's how they'll continue. So nothing will change on the ground. The problem is still the, if you like, the collusive tendering, legal collusive tendering of the contractors and the arrangements that the contractors have made with the CFMEU. You don't solve anything by having a Royal Commission into the CFMEU. You've got to go to the core of the problem.
Okay, well, so what is the core of the problem, Graham, and how do we get to it?
Well, the core of the problem is that there's no proper open tendering for government construction work. There hasn't been for 50 bloody years. The only people that can tender are what they call the tier one contractors, which are the big guys. And the rules and regulations and all the stuff that's built around them and the policy means effectively there's no competition. And you solve the problem by simply saying we'll have open tendering. Anybody that's qualified to tender, right, can do the work. And when that happens, you then force the contractors to do deals with the CFMEU, which are different from the deals they do now. So that's how you end up with 50 to 100% more for each contract. And God, Damien, with the Olympics coming up, it won't be double the cost, it'll be treble the cost, because either side of government who gets in will cave into them. So that's how you solve the problem. You're going to have open tendering and you need to be quite firm about what you allow any union to do.
Okay, so the basic point you're making is that we're paying 50 to 100% more for most public works projects because of the way the system works with these closed tenders and deals all done behind closed doors, and that this is our taxpayer money. We're basically all being ripped off by the system. There's no competition for efficiency and wages and getting the job done as cost effectively as possible. Now, nobody wants to deny workers fair pay for a fair day's work, but there's a little too much nudge, nudge, wink, wink in the way that the building game operates these days. And you don't think that the Liberal National Coalition will be able to handle things any better than Labor?
They have no idea. They have no idea. They don't understand how any of this stuff works. And worse, they've got no curiosity to find out. They just take the old-fashioned line, oh, CFMEU, naughty, 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 smack, smack, and, oh, we need a Royal Commission into them and all this garbage. I mean, they're just a bloody organisation which is part of the ALP. They're not a separate organisation. They are an arm of the ALP. And by crikey, they do well. The membership fee is about $2,000 and it costs them less than $200 per member to actually provide the service. You've got 20,000 members in Queensland alone. What about the rest of Australia? By $2,000. It's 40 million that's available to be used to support the ALP. That's how it works. There's no donations, it's pin money donations. That's not the issue. There's a whole heap of people in the CFMEU, a lot of whom have been dismissed. We saw the article in the Courier Mail on Tuesday. Where are they going to work? They're all going to go and work for the new entities or the old entities that have been sitting around for a long time.
Yeah, all right, Graham. Okay, I should point out that that's your humble opinion there about the union serving the ALP and being pretty much the same thing. I'd be inclined to agree with that opinion, but we do welcome anyone from the ALP or the unions who'd like to come on and debate that point with you about how the resources from all that union money actually get used. You say the fees are up to $2,000 in some cases for services that only cost about $250 to deliver. Where does the rest of it go? Definitely not in direct donations to the ALP because that isn't allowed. So maybe resources. Anyway, that's an important public issue and up for debate, and we invite the other side on to explain that one. Thanks, Graham. Graham Haycroft, the co-founder and head of the RED Unions, Australia's alternative unions, which include the Independent Workers Union of Australia, the Nurses Professional Association of Australia and the Teachers Professional Association. It's been a week since Kamala Harris's cringeworthy performance in the only TV interview that she's done in more than a month after becoming the US Democrat Party's presidential nominee. Not only was the interview done on the Democrat-friendly CNN network, not only was it only about 20 or so minutes, but it was filmed like a campaign promotional video. And the interviewer never strongly challenged Harris on her policy backflips and her poor performance while in office. But worst of all, and most embarrassing to smart, strong women everywhere, Harris couldn't do the interview one-on-one. She had to have her vice presidential candidate sitting right beside her, ready to bail her out if she got into any trouble. He performed worse than she did, but that's another story. Nothing says I'm a strong woman like needing a man to sit beside you in a TV interview. Clips of the interview and oodles of commentary have been all over social media, so I don't want to rehash old news, but I do want to take a quick look at where the polls are 1 week later. And sure enough, it seems like the honeymoon period is coming to an end. There have only been 2 major polls released covering the period since Kamala Harris's CNN interview. The biggest one, by a company called Big Data Poll, with a sample of 3,000 voters, now has Trump back even with Harris. And The Economist's YouGov poll has Harris still ahead, but now by only 2 points. Donald Trump hasn't been holding back on interviews on his side, and he isn't afraid to openly discuss any issues at all, it seems, but he does ramble and talk in circles a lot. He did a town hall in Wisconsin with the former Democrat presidential candidate and Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard is a former Army Reserve officer known for her anti-war stance.
Ronald Reagan famously said, "A nuclear war can never be won and should never be fought." And the Democrats and Kamala Harris, they were quick to talk about how climate change is an existential threat. But what they're not talking about is the existential threat of nuclear war and World War III. There was a recent poll that YouGov did that pointed out over 60% of Americans feel that World War III and nuclear war is going to happen within 5 to 10 years. I wanted to ask you about this because it's important that people understand what kind of leadership you bring, what you will do to stop this slide towards nuclear war and World War III so that we can feel hopeful again.
Well, thank you. So, Viktor Orban, a very strong leader from Hungary, Prime Minister of Hungary, he said, you have to bring Trump back as President of the United States. You will have no problem. He single-handedly kept things, and it's true. And I could do it with telephone calls by being smart, but they respected me and they respected our nation. They don't respect our nation anymore. They don't respect our nation anymore. Think of it. What would the world be like if Russia didn't do what they did and they would have never done it? I used to speak to Putin about it. I had a very good relationship. And it wasn't leaving Afghanistan. And they should have kept Bagram. That's a big air base. It's 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. They didn't keep it. You know who occupies it now, Tulsi? China occupies it. So we have, if you have the right president, and we don't right now, do we even have a president? He just came in, think of it. He just came in from wherever the hell he went. You know, there was a coup. He just doesn't know it yet.
Donald Trump, not a person who's afraid to have a chat and get away from a teleprompter. You can catch us here on The Other Side every Friday night from 7 p.m. on YouTube. If you'd like to support us, the best way is to support our sponsors. One of them is Public Internet Access, piavpn.com/otherside. That'll get you 83% off your internet security. So have a think about that, because I know you hear these VPN ads all the time and you think, oh, it's just for someone else. No, talking to you. This could really help. And also you can access Netflix from anywhere in the world if you put a VPN on. So Public Internet Access, piavpn.com/otherside will get you 83% off your internet security. It helps our show because we get a little payment when you sign up, which is fantastic for us. So you're getting to donate to The Other Side, which is really, really important. But you're getting this wonderful 2 years of internet access at only, I think it's about $2.60 something a month. So it's just so cheap. So jump on that with the 83% off offer and you're helping out the show. Another way to help us is to tell all your friends about the show. I've got to say, we really do need support right now. This is a critical time for us, and we've just got to get the numbers up and the support up in order to be able to keep going. So please do share our content. Don't just like it. I mean, do like it, but share it on social media. That is the most important thing you can do. And share it off social media. Have conversations with your friends about the show and tell them about us, please. So you can catch up on the best news and commentary of the week without the woke in just an hour by watching or listening to The Other Side every weekend. And do subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It's absolutely free. Just hit the subscribe button and the little bell too, and that'll notify you when we post anything. And also, if you're feeling generous, you can give us a direct donation through the Super Thanks donation button on YouTube. You can do that by clicking that little $ thanks icon under the video frame there. And you can also follow us on X, Twitter, at The Other Side on X. It all helps. One social media platform company this show has nothing to do with and will not have anything to do with, except just weekly posting a link to the show on YouTube, is Meta, Mark Zuckerberg's platforms, Facebook and Instagram. We don't have anything to do with them because they are notorious for censoring content that goes counter to the left-wing narratives, playing silly games without appropriate avenues for appeal from content creators like us. We are not playing, Zuck, and neither should you. So you'll mainly find us on YouTube and X. But you may have seen in the news that Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted last week that he had been pressured by the FBI and others under Joe Biden and the Democrats to suppress knowledge and to suppress information. That is astounding stuff. This is how America's ABC News reported it last week.
This morning, Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg admitting he bowed to pressure from the Biden administration to censor content. The Facebook founder issuing a letter to the House Judiciary Committee that said senior administration officials pushed the social media platform to censor posts about COVID-19 and expressed a lot of frustration when the company resisted. Zuckerberg saying, "I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it." Adding, "I feel strongly that we should not compromise our content standards due to pressure from any administration in either direction, and we're ready to push back if something like this happens again."
It really is an incredible admission. And as Fox News host Greg Gutfeld pointed out, it really is time to perhaps listen to the centre-right side of politics when we say that we're being censored by social media, and understand that censorship is bad. What would we not know about if not for Elon Musk? And the left want to tell us that he is the bad guy? Give me a break.
What other stories would we have missed? For example, do you think the Biden senility dementia story we would have known about if Musk hadn't bought Twitter? There's a lot of stories like that you wouldn't have known about, but now you do, which then kind of bugs me because who does the media hate more? Musk. Why do you hate the guy that's guaranteeing your free speech, that's making these stories roam free, that's challenging you to chase the story? When it came to borders, crime, COVID corruption, the Hunter's laptop, the influence peddling, government censorship. We talked about this. People laughed. The creeps in the media, the Don Lemons, the Chris Cuomos, the Brian Stelters, the Rachel Maddow, they all thought we were nuts as they were saying it's Republicans doing the censorship. It's Republicans in conspiracies. They were accusing the right of doing the stuff that they were always doing. And now they expect you to when they say, Donald Trump wants to ban abortion. No. The elections are perfect. No. Did you see what happened in Texas? They had to remove 1 million voters from the rolls. It's like, when are you going to just listen to us, America?
Great stuff there. Greg Gutfeld on Fox News, The 5 Show. For the first time ever, Australia has provided service to a United States nuclear submarine. The USS Hawaii, a Virginia-class nuclear sub, and the USS Emery S. Land, a supply ship that supports Hawaii, were docked last week in Western Australia at HMAS Stirling. HMAS Stirling is the Royal Australian Navy base on our country's west coast on Garden Island off Perth. As Liberal federal MP from WA, Andrew Hastie, put it, young Australians were now working alongside their allies, welcomed and integrated into the company of both US Navy ships, bringing the AUKUS alliance to life. Just a quick recap. In March last year, the US, UK and Australia announced as part of AUKUS a thing called the Submarine Rotational Forces West Initiative. Under this plan, the US and the UK are going to keep a permanent rotational presence of nuclear-powered subs at Stirling. They'll visit more often and stay for longer. Australia's own nuclear-powered subs will eventually be based at Stirling from the early 2030s. In this current visit, 30 Australian sailors are learning how to repair a Virginia-class submarine. In late July, Stirling was visited by the US Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, and the UK's First Sea Lord and Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Ben Key. Australia's Chief of Navy, Vice Admiral Mark Hammond, spoke then about the importance of AUKUS, as Naval News reported.
It's a real privilege and an honour to be here with two of my best friends in the international Navy community and colleagues. For over 100 years, our three navies have been cooperating and integrating in various ways around the globe in peacetime and in conflict. In the last 12 months, we've seen Australian sailors and officers undergo training in both the Royal Navy and the United States Navy nuclear power submarine programs, and we've seen some outstanding results achieved. As of now, we have Australian submariners serving in half a dozen US Navy and Royal Navy fast attack submarines, continuing their training.
Andrew Hastie says a lot of people are shifting their lives to WA too. Recruiters are chasing the tradies who will harden industry, and small businesses are opening to build supply chains. US Admiral Lisa Franchetti says AUKUS is key to our ongoing security and prosperity.
Thank you again, Mark. It is great to be here with you and my other mate, Ben. It's really an honor to be here back in Australia. Our national defense strategy talks a lot about the importance of our allies and partners. And when we look around the world, it is a very challenging geopolitical environment with a rules-based international order that has supported our prosperity and security all around the globe for the last 3/4 of a century. We know that that is under threat. As you said, we stood shoulder to shoulder. I like to say in the navies, we have been steaming in formation for well over 100 years. And AUKUS is a great opportunity for us to build on that collective capability, the strength of our navies, the strength of our industrial bases, and the strength of the innovative spirit of all three of our nations. And I know from what I've seen here today that we are eyes wide open about both the challenges and the opportunities that we face, and that we have the right people in place to deliver AUKUS, both today as we get to all of our intermediate milestones and way into the future.
That's US Admiral Lisa Franchetti on the YouTube channel Naval News. The UK's Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Ben Key, also spoke of his nation's commitment to AUKUS, even after the change of government in the UK to Labour.
But as the new government and the new Secretary of State in the United Kingdom recently reaffirmed, we are 100% committed to the AUKUS programme and what it means, not just for the United Kingdom, but for the three nations represented here, for all the reasons that Admiral Mark and Admiral Lisa have laid out. And I too share that sense of excitement that the momentum that we see growing here, which is being matched by so many other initiatives across our three nations at the moment, will in due course realise something that is genuinely transformational. The next part of a shared journey of operating nuclear submarines into the future to underpin everything that we have as values around a free and open oceans, democratic, rules-based international system, which matters to all of our nations.
UK's Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Ben Key. And that is all we have time for this week. On the other side, your weekly summary of the best news and commentary without the woke. Please remember to tell your friends about the show. Follow us on X and YouTube, and please smash the like, subscribe and every other button on the platforms that you can. We drop a new show every Friday night at 7. If you're watching on YouTube, to make sure you never miss any of our content, please hit that subscribe button below and hit the little bell. Little bell notifies you when we post new content, and it's all absolutely free. Catch you next week. I'm Damien Guri. Bye for now.